Bare Infinity is a band that has been around since 2003. They've released 3 albums, this being their most recent third album that released in 2017. The first album they released, I've took a bit of a listen of it to see, where the band's come from, how they've grown from the roots, if they've changed the sound up and everything. The first album kind of lacked good production quality and stuff. It kind of lacked any kind of identity. It was very bland, straightforward, symphonic kind of metal. It's a female-fronted band, so it's just this usually, quiet verses with the kind of operatic kind of female voice. Guitars kind of come in the chorus, and then you kind of wrap the song up. So very stale, very bland. A clone of a lot of other bands that don't really have a talent to really go out there and make an identity for themselves, so they just kind of clone each other. The second album had a bit more in the way of production quality. It got a bit heavier instead of being that kind of typical, it's a lead female, therefore we have to make it extremely girly and not heavy and have some kind of balls to it, which I think isn't really fair. So I kind of like it when a female can kind of prove that there is actually a lot more aggression to them instead of taking it out just because there is a female presence, which a lot of metal bands actually do. I'm not really keen on that. So the second album, it got a bit heavier, the production got better, and now we're with the third album, The Butterfly Razor. Now, as I said, it's kind of the band's labelled as power metal as well as symphonic metal. Now, these are all accurate. They do have power metal qualities, they do have symphonic metal qualities, but I think they kind of keep stepping into them things. Overall, I just think they're a very kind of straightforward, bland metal act. It's just, incorporates symphonic elements and then takes some power metal elements and then infuses it into, just the kind of bland metal formula. But the thing is, this is probably the most symphonic album they've done. The previous albums, the previous 2, was kind of lacking that symphonic sound to it, the kind of orchestras, some kind of choirs in areas, that really big epic sound. The previous 2 albums didn't actually really have that. This album actually incorporates that, which makes the album sound a lot better. It's a bigger sound, there's more to it, there's more to listen to, so it makes everything a lot more interesting. So it's got all that kind of going on. It has Nightwish kind of elements to it, so there's the odd song which it sounds exactly like Nightwish throughout, so the massive symphonic intros as well as kind of choruses. This band is different to Nightwish because obviously they don't do that kind of big grand symphonic nature of Nightwish. Nightwish are very big with that symphonic metal and being big and epic and scope and sound. Bare Infinity, their songs are kind of short, around 4 minutes and stuff, so it's a lot more simple, a lot more straightforward. They're not as big and epic as Nightwish, so it's not as symphonic. It's only the odd track where it gets that big and grand. Other than that, it's pretty simple symphonic metal stuff. Another thing that changes with Bare Infinity is there is actually a fair few solos in the album. I don't think there's a solo in every track, but you do get a decent amount of solos. As for in Nightwish, you have a good guitarist, but he barely does anything or plays. So, a good guitarist who's extremely lazy. As for in Bare Infinity, we actually have a guitarist who actually, puts the effort in. So, what do I think of the album? It's got 12 tracks, it's a decent length, so you do kind of, get your money's worth and your time with it because it's just over an hour. So that's a pretty decent amount of time and everything. The last track is the longest one, around 7 minutes I believe it is. The lower end of 7, so not, near 8, I think it's more, just near that 7 mark. But other than that, the lengths are usually around 3-4 minutes, maybe 5. and because of that, everything's quite simple. Now, there's been some bands that can be quite surprising with short songs and put a lot actually in there and make unique tones and things. But Bare Infinity fall under the typical thing with these female-fronted bands, the symphonic nature, kind of like Nightwish do, and therefore it becomes formulaic. It's something you've heard before. There is nothing new. There's a lack of identity. It's like, it's Bare Infinity because, you know, it has that voice. No one can really completely steal this singer's voice. So it has that kind of going for it, as well as other things. You know, the players have different kind of play styles and things. But other than that, you can kind of choose and pick what sounds like what. So it's like, oh, this sounds a lot like Nightwish, and then this sounds a bit more like Epica, and this sounds a bit more like Within Temptation, and then there's this band and this band. And you can keep drawing in aspects. Now, you can probably do that with most bands, because there's so many bands out there, and they're all influenced by somebody, unless they wouldn't really be into music. So you could kind of argue that with a lot of bands, but with the really big bands who get really adventurous, they do have their kind of core sound and do something outside the box. As with Bare Infinity aren't, you know, a complete clone of a single band, but they clone a handful and then they just stick to that, and there's nothing that is theirs, which makes it, as I say, quite bland. So the things they copy, as I say, there's the odd song where, you know, they kind of have that kind of violin kind of flute kind of instrument that plays in the odd Nightwish track, and then it gets all, you know, bouncy and upbeat with you know, all the orchestra and everything, and then it's sounds you know, symphonic and power metal style. And then there's other sections where it does that female kind of opera voiced verse, which basically means that it goes extremely, you know, womanly, so a woman's opera voice, and it's all girly and everything, and the guitar is completely cut out, and you're basically just left with bass, drums, and that is it, until you get maybe a pre-chorus or halfway through the verse, or maybe it just keeps going until you get to the chorus, meaning it's been done before. Within Temptation does this a lot, Nightwish does this a lot, where basically you have guitars cut out in the verse, which just leaves musically a very empty sound, a very shallow sound of not really anything interesting. All you basically have is a very simple beat, like you'd have in pop music, and then the singer basically just carrying everything. But this is metal, so we kind of expect more. We kind of have minds that kind of thirst for something more than this. We don't want something really simple and straightforward. We're not here just to basically have the singer experience. We're here for a whole package of excellent talent and skill and music and emotion and beauty and melodies and technical things, but everything drops out. You're left with the singer for the most part. And then the symphonic part, it's been done before. It sounds good and everything, like when Nightwish did the big epic sounds and everything, it sounds absolutely unbelievable, but that's Nightwish, and Nightwish do it a lot, so even for Nightwish it becomes a little kind of stale and repetitive, and then this band is copying it. And then the verse thing is done by many, Evanescence, Within Temptation, Nightwish, Epica, all of them sort of bands all have verses where it completely strips down and you just get this really bland backing track with this vocal style singing from females. And I think it's absolutely, it kind of makes women look bad, because this is what I see a lot of female in metal as, instead of being able to really suck it up with heavier bands like, you know, Avenged Sevenfold and things, Iron Maiden. I can't see women doing that because there's not a lot of metal where they can do it. there is a lot more females in this kind of area than other places, like the lead singer in Unleash the Archers. She has the power for it, but there's not a lot of singers like her, which is really unfortunate. It's a great shame that there's not more women that can actually go out there and actually do it metal properly, instead of always doing it this way where the rest of the band has to basically stop and back out. So it's incredibly disappointing. As for the solos are decent. They have melody to it, so they're not kind of going overly complex. They're not just kind of emotionless, just like something's just playing and it's kind of going by what the input is, but not really, connecting or feeling. So the solos usually will have emotion to them, but it's not where you need it. So it's basically just like you can feel the emotion, but there also is a bit of a disconnect with it. So it's not fully, utilizing the song. It's not fully delivering on what it needs to be. You can tell there is emotion to it and there is a melody, but it just doesn't come across as anything big, emotional, not anything that's memorable you can really connect with. So it tries, but usually it's just a slow, kind of more musical solo that doesn't really leave an impact for the most part. But again, it's decent, and I'm glad it's there. But other than that, there's not really much else to cover. That is basically the band. They copy Nightwish in areas. Other than that, there is a lot of verses which the whole band cuts out, and it's basically just a simple beat, just like pop music, and then you got the symphonic female metal singing that has been done and is still getting done by billions of bands, which is come to be so stale and so bland and everything, and just gives me this image of females in metal of they really struggle, and it is very difficult for them to actually do it. You need a certain type of female and a certain type of voice to actually do metal. Therefore, some women I don't think can do it, but that's mostly because I see this a lot. So it's not that I'm being sexist. I know it does come across like that, and if I've offended someone, I apologise, but that is the way it comes across. And as I say, I would like to see more typical stuff where the guitars can stay in and keep that heavy vibe going with a female, like Unleash the Archers. I love that band. I love Brittany Slayes in that band. She is absolutely incredible of a vocalist. Even Solaris, that female singer was a bit weird out the gate just because it was quite high compared to where all the male voices I hear in metal. But then once I got used to her, it's an incredible voice, and the guitars are always there backing her up, and they work together, especially on the new album. So it's a darn shame just because this is bland. There is nothing new, there is nothing unique. If you like Nightwish, then technically I think you'd like it, but even then it's hard to say, because if you like Nightwish, then you get Nightwish from Nightwish. Why would you go to this? Because you're just getting Nightwish. So why? It's like Avenged Sevenfold's my favourite band, but if someone completely just clones Avenged Sevenfold, I don't really think I'd care. It's just like, well, I've heard this before, and I'm with Avenged Sevenfold, so why would I jump into this? There's nothing new, so I wouldn't do that. And that's one reason why I like Avenged Sevenfold, and they're my favourite band as well, because each album sounds completely different from one another. I don't want a second City of Evil, I don't want a second The Stage. I want to see them do something new, because they always do, and it's always impressive, for the most part at least. Like Nightmare was a bit of a mess, Hail to the King was a bit simple for them, but I do respect them and everything. You can't always get it right when you're always trying to reinvent yourself, so kudos to them. but that is what I want, and I'd rather them fail doing that than just not even bother. You know what I mean? So yeah, it sounds like Nightwish in other areas. It's just like, sounds like Evanescence. It's a little more heavy than stuff like that. Some verses they actually do kind of keep the guitars, but it does try and keep it in a more melody orientated way, just because, again, will sound sexist, but I don't know if her voice can really pull off something heavier, because there's nothing that is telling me that she can actually do that, because the album does not cover that. And then again, for the solos that are actually there, they're decent, but they're not doing anything grand, big, epic. It's not for like shred, it's not repeating patterns, it's got, you know, some melody and emotion to it, but it's just, it's not emotional enough, it doesn't connect enough, it doesn't resonate enough, it doesn't sound as beautiful as it should be. It just comes across as it's melodic, there is emotion to it, but it's just like the emotion can't be bothered to really be properly shown and coming across. It's like someone trying to explain their mood but isn't really wanting to, but they're like forced to do it anyway. It's basically the best way I can probably explain it. So rating the album, it'll be basically a 6.5. It's above average just because of the kind of symphonic nature of it, the kind of keys that kind of follow some of them epic sounds that Nightwish do have, because they are epic and I do like the sound, even though it is a bit bland and is getting stale. It does have solos, the voices are nice as well, but it's not really a good album, which will be, you know, 7 and up. So it's not good, it's not very good, it's not great. It doesn't have a chance, it's not doing anything good. Good would be, you know, good, great sounding solos, fun, something new, but as I go through the album, if you've heard it before in other bands, and then you've got an album that has a sound and everything, and then the album all sounds like that, but then this album sounds like so many others, that's a lot of the same. So I get bored very quickly. You get to about track 2 and I'm like, yeah, there's not really anything here. Until you get to a certain track and then it goes more of that, you know, epic Nightwish thing. It's like, that was interesting, but then that's basically an intro. It's just like, okay, and now I've checked out and my brain's turned off. Because it's really difficult to focus on something when there's nothing there for your mind to really dive into, so it basically just melts, feels, at least for me at least. So yeah, 6.5, it's very disappointing, lacks identity, it's exactly like a lot of other bands. It's better than their previous two acts, I'll give them that. Their first album was incredibly bland, bad production. Second album got a bit heavy, which was nice. This now has the symphonic stuff and everything. It's got a little bit of heaviness to it, more than maybe Within Temptation and Evanescence, but that's arguable, so that tells you just how heavy this gets. It has the solos, which gives it that step up, but again, Nightwish has them really big epic stuff. So it's basic song structures and songwriting. Nightwish at least has some big adventurous songs, even though their big adventurous stuff can also follow similar patterns. And then their guitarist is really good but does bugger all, because I have no clue why. But yeah, that's basically it for this band. I'm sorry if you can hear outside noises. My neighbours like to scream, as well as what I think is basically hammering their walls constantly. I don't know why they do that, but they do it every single day, so I'm sorry if you hear that, but I can't exactly tell them to shut up. I've hit the fucking floor and scream shut the hell up sometimes, but what can you do, eh? So I do apologise if that has affected the video. But yeah, Bare Infinity. If you like Nightwish, then maybe you'll like it. If you like Evanescence and, you know, Within Temptation, maybe. But again, hard to say, because if you listen to them sort of bands and you like that single band in that, you know, one area, you don't want more of it, their Infinity will still not be for you. So 6.5, it's, you know, it's above average. It has some qualities to it, but other than that, there is nothing special nor that good about the album, I'm afraid. Sorry to say, but that's the way it is. So thanks for watching, and if you made it to the end, then obviously you can hear me now. So thank you for sticking with me to the end of this video. It means a lot, and I'm glad if you liked it. If you didn't, I apologise. But until the next video, I hope to see you there. So, until then.